Okay, welcome to the Marijuana Minute podcast. I suppose this will be covering cannabis news, culture, and politics in 60 minutes or less. The videos we do a minute or less. But this is a podcast version, so we're going to be talking a little bit longer. Today we have Kurt from Kannatopia, and we're going to talk to him about his product and what he's creating. So let's just get started right away. Kurt, what is Kannatopia?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I love it. So, love what you guys are doing and love to get this going and be one of the first people to get going on your guys' stuff. So.
Yes, Kurt is our inaugural guest on the actual podcast, so we have to thank him for being the special guinea pig.
No problem. Yeah, so what Kannatopia is it's a social network for users 21 and over for the cannabis industry. There's kind of two main problems that we're working to solve, and that first one is for cannabis users in general. They don't want to be using your traditional social networks like a Facebook, Twitter, Instagram to kind of talk about their cannabis experiences, get exposed to cannabis products and this kind of stuff alike. And this is kind of because of the nature of how big these sites already are. Mm-hmm. So you have, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and basically, they're already exposed to too many employers or too many family members.
Right. They don't want their possible future employer checking up on their Facebook and then finding
whatever
something.
Information, just because of the nature of the space is kind of a taboo nature still, and opinions can sway left or right. So it's kind of hard for people to want to share these kinds of things on networks that are already open like that. So what we do is we allow users to use their real identity or kind of sign up with discretion. So it gives them the option to, with their comfortability level of what they want to do on a site like ours. The second problem is also for the businesses and brands themselves. These are guys like your dispensaries, your cultivators,
right?
All the cannabis brands that are being established right now and have been established, they can't use your typical traditional social networks like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So it poses a big problem for both these guys. So what we're doing is creating a network where they can do traditional social media functions and at the same time use kind of our value features around creating guides, creating recommendations, and a way for people to log their own cannabis history.
So you're in essence, you're kind of, and I hate to use this word, but safe space for cannabis users and the cannabis industry to have their own like social network, their own place where they can openly talk about stuff, where they can openly have a dialogue, maybe about their products or about usage or all that good stuff.
Exactly.
Okay. Awesome. So what was the initial inspiration to even start down this path? So you're an entrepreneur.
Yep, absolutely.
I don't know. We haven't really talked about too much of your entrepreneurial history. Was this the first project that you kind of picked up and decided to run with as an entrepreneur? Are you a serial entrepreneur? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So kind of the first project that I went all in on. There were many things that I did throughout my undergrad school and graduate school, just, exploring the different areas that I thought I might want to pursue in. But the cannabis industry is one that I'm very close to. My brother's a medical cannabis user. He has epilepsy, so he uses it on a daily basis to combat a lot of side effects that he has with traditional pharmaceutical medications and the things he gets to help stimulate his appetite from using cannabis. So it really touches heart real close to me with that, and that's kind of why I got involved in this space. Started looking into the cannabis space about 6 years ago.
Okay.
Did all my research, and growing up, all my friends were cannabis consumers.
It's everywhere. That's the funny thing is that it seems to be so ubiquitous, especially in the millennial culture.
Yep.
Is that cannabis usage is like the new, alcohol or tobacco or something of that nature. And it's interesting that as far as the side effect profile of cannabis goes, when you compare it to smoking cigarettes or alcohol, it has a much lower side effect profile. It's, people aren't dying because they smoke too much weed.
Correct.
And you can die from drinking too much alcohol real easily.
Yep.
That's not a hard thing. And just all the other negative psychological effects that come along with alcohol.
Yep.
And then on the cigarette side, cigarettes are terrible for you. They cause cancer. And it's interesting. There's, leading research out there that suggests that maybe cannabis actually helps control cancer. So it's just a really interesting dynamic that this generation has, and there's still plenty of alcohol and cigarette smoking going around, but has definitely embraced cannabis in a way that I don't think we've seen maybe since, the 60s, that generation.
Yeah. And what's interesting about it is, cannabis dates back to, ancient Chinese tradition culture. Mm-hmm. It's been around for over 5,000 years. And basically, you have alcohol and tobacco, and there hasn't been one documented case of somebody actually dying from cannabis or overdosing on cannabis.
Right. Yeah.
So, and, that really plays hard, pretty close is that, we have what's called our endocannabinoid system, and there's no what's called an LD50.
Is that the lethal
that's
dose?
A lethal dose rate, and they've tried to establish it, and I've seen studies where they estimate that it could cost about 1,500 pounds of marijuana for you to overdose, which is an insane amount versus alcohol and tobacco. And you have over 400,000 people dying from tobacco every year and 50,000 from alcohol dying every year. And yet there's been 0 attributed deaths to cannabis in over 5,000 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the statistics for aspirin, I know that was one social media post we had, that like 13,000 people in the U.S. approximately a year die from aspirin, which is you just buy it anywhere. And so there's like this huge fear that I don't necessarily understand around cannabis and cannabis consumption that we seem to have like a double standard for, right?
Yep.
Because we have things that are super toxic that are bad for you and easy access. Yeah. It's open.
Yeah.
But we've singled out cannabis as this like one thing where it's,
Yeah. You know what? We should do a comparison between McDonald's and cannabis and see which ones are worse for you.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I did not introduce Michael Martire is also in the studio with us today, co-founder of LeafDrop. He's hanging out with us as well. Thank you, Michael, for coming.
Yeah, no problem.
That would be a very interesting comparison to make is between eating McDonald's. I think did the super high me?
He did a similar thing.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if he did a direct comparison, but it was like because he did the McDonald's documentary thing where he would eat McDonald's for 30
every day.
Yeah, every day for 30 days or something.
Yeah, he almost died. Yeah, see.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure there was a super high, so that was Super Size Me,
Super
the documentary.
Size Me, and then he did Super High Me.
Super High Me, which I have not seen. Has anyone seen that?
I saw it a couple years ago, I think, but
okay,
I think I brushed back up on it though.
Is it just smoking weed?
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of that. So.
Oh, okay.
I'd have to go watch it again though. Watch so many documentaries now, so.
Oh yeah, no, and especially with like Hulu and Netflix, man.
You probably just ended up spending a lot of time at home, right?
Yeah.
For 30 days, just hanging out.
Exactly. No, it's just it probably wasn't exciting as him watching him eat McDonald's, but
yeah, that was scary.
One other question I wanted to ask you, since you are starting in Illinois, you guys are based in Illinois, you live in Illinois, Chicago in. What do you think of the regulations that are in Illinois? And I ask that question because for people who don't know, the regulations around medical marijuana in the state of Illinois are a lot more stricter, if that's a word. They're a lot tighter than a lot of other states out there. So Kurt, what is kind of your take on that as far as, you were starting a business here? What does that look like to you?
Yeah. So, I mean, from the medical standpoint, they had their bill that passed a few years ago, and it was only until like November 9th, 2015 that the actual first sales of cannabis went out for medical purposes here in Illinois. So it took a long time just to get rolling here. In terms of the regulation stuff, it is one of the strictest in the country. And, it was lucky that we even did get this bill passed in the state of Illinois. But we're glad we did. And I think it just passed, if I'm correct, by a couple votes or just the amount of votes needed to get it out. So even though it is strict, it's a great starting spot. You got to start somewhere, and unfortunately, we would like it to get much better, take some of the stuff out of the laws. And I'm no lawyer or politician, but there are some things like fingerprinting that patients have to go through. That's a big holdup for a lot of people. They don't want to give their fingerprints.
Yeah, and I believe even Joseph, the gentleman who manages the pilot program, I believe he even commented that looked like it might have been kind of overboard. As far as it goes.
So my understanding was kind of give and take between them to decide, like these types of things should be in here versus not in here.
Well, and the Governor Bruce Rauner did not sign the latest
condition list, which included PTSD, and I thought that was very surprising that because PTSD seems to be one of those conditions that is very synonymous right now with cannabis usage as far as helping treat the condition, right? Yeah. So it was surprising to me that he basically said to all of the people suffering PTSD, which is mainly veterans and stuff, absolutely,
no.
Yeah, it is a little surprising that he did that. I think this is the second time around that he has said no to any additional conditions. Every year, the state has twice a year where they can add conditions and have them go through the Department of Health board that they have established, or the advisory board, and then it goes to Rauner eventually. So I think he's just waiting to see how the program does. Still is early in the program.
Absolutely.
For sales. I mean, it's only been November 2015, so we're only handful of months in the program, which has been going very well so far for the people that are out there. We just hope that it continues to grow, patient count continues to grow, and that conditions get added to the list so that people that have PTSD or some of the other conditions like irritable bowel syndrome or osteoarthritis get the opportunity to use medical cannabis and improve their life and their daily life.
Right. And I think that debate has finally, in most people's minds, in the public mind, has been won. That cannabis is a medicinal product that can be used in a medicinal fashion. And I think what a lot of people have an issue with as far as accepting that is that they have been fed this kind of big pharma idea about a medication is like a pill you take, right? And that is the only form. It's a pill, recommended by a guy in a white coat, and that's what medicine is.
Yeah.
But that's not the rest of the world has a much different idea of what medicine is, and cannabis kind of falls into that category because. In one way, you could say it is like self-medicating, that you are self-medicating. And there seems to be a big negative on that. Yeah. But I don't think there necessarily should be that big of a negative on it.
Yeah, it's like, with cannabis, it's hard to determine because there hasn't been a great amount of studies out there, because of being a Schedule I narcotic drug, basically, in our country, that the research hasn't been done. So, once it moves down to Schedule II and more research can be done, we'll get a lot more, I think, proven statistics to show that, from a medical standpoint, that, components like CBD that are really showing benefits to people.
Yeah, and for people who don't know what CBDs are, they are a different ingredient or a different cannabinoid, found in pot, which is not psychoactive, right? So the main psychoactive part in pot is THC, which gives you the high feeling, right? But CBDs don't actually give you the high feeling. That's why it's actually appropriate. A lot of times they're giving them to children with seizure disorders, things like that. A lot, epileptics. It's appropriate to give them that medication because they're not actually getting high as a kite.
Right.
Yeah. The only thing people understand that these people growing have figured out ways to eliminate the THC out of the strain. So these kids that are 9 years old, they're using cannabis to fight their condition. They're not actually getting high, and So the thing is, I don't think people understand the medical benefits at all. You'd be you guys wouldn't be surprised, but I think other people would be surprised at how many people have no clue what marijuana can actually do.
Yeah.
And so that really interests me. I find that very amusing, talking to my grandparents, older people that are from a completely different time, and kind of going back and forth and stating the facts that we have now compared to just hearsay, years and years ago. And it's interesting. Some of them kind of changed their mind. Yeah. So
I have personally been seeing a lot of that with just older people that I know, that their positions even over the past 2 years has been changing. And that tracks with national data about, people living in the United States, what their attitude is towards cannabis. And I think right now we're around 52% are just straight up pro legalization.
I think the latest, there was one that came out that was, 58%.
Yeah.
In favor. And then I think there was one that was around in the 70s of people that in the country that believed that medical marijuana should be legal as across the country.
Yeah. And so it speaks, I think it speaks volumes to the fact, the functioning state our country is still in, that a lot of people want to get Debbie Downer on the state of the government and all this, but it seems to still be working in some contexts. It may be slower than people want. I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs in Chicago who are frustrated with the fact that Bruce Rauner did not sign the condition list because they want to build products into this industry, and they need consumers in the industry to do that. But I do think it still speaks volumes that our government is still working at some level.
Yeah.
That people's attitudes are changing, the will of the people is changing, and the government is actually reflecting that.
Right.
So that still speaks. I mean, everyone likes to pull out their political sword and complain about stuff, but
and I mean, with any government, whether it's Congress or state governments, everything seems to always go a little bit a lot slower than what the public perception may be. I mean, and I like to compare it to you look at the Supreme Court case of gay marriage. Cannabis falls in that same kind of thing.
Yes.
Of they've been going state by state, then they go nationwide all of a sudden with Supreme Court stuff, and cannabis is kind of in that same period, I believe.
Yeah, so you would like to see it pushed to Supreme Court level.
It's interesting because of the internet now. Before the internet, you couldn't really have an accurate idea of the people that agreed with you. You can only go by your town and what you hear, or like the newspaper or whatever else. Now with the internet, you can get an accurate idea of who's behind you and what you deserve. So with gay marriage, like, everyone understood they deserve that. Everyone's on the same page. So it's kind of like the government kind of almost had to comply, or else there's going to be huge problems. If you have your entire population turning against you, that's bad. So I think it's kind of similar with, kind of with alcohol. It was a similar thing. Everyone's like, we want this. There's no reason we shouldn't have this. And it's the same thing with marijuana.
Yeah. And it really is the same thing with cannabis, because, you look at how the states have gone since, California was the first state in 96, but now where we're at is 23 medical marijuana states, 4 recreational states, and in 2016, which is very exciting, is that we're going to probably have 5 more states voting on full legalization of recreation, a couple more states voting on medical.
Texas is going to vote on it, but
we'll
see.
We'll see. You'll see Florida voting on medical again. You'll see maybe Ohio voting on both recreational and medical. I think Nevada is going to be voting on recreational.
And do you think it's an interesting thing that happens? Like in Colorado, for instance, there's medical and then there's recreational.
Yeah.
And it seems like I believe they're playing by like 2 different sets of rules as far as regulations and stuff. Yeah. That seems a little bit like if you're going to have legalization, it seems like you should maybe shut down the medical programs, or is there a reason that they're keeping them up? I don't know.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but at our last meetup, the director decided that the programs were made in reverse. So, like, the medical isn't, like, really looked over at all, and then the recreational is. So the people that need the highest quality stuff and the most regulated stuff aren't getting that. So, I think kind of they're so lenient, which is cool, which is, I think, what the people wanted, but they're sacrificing quality for the people that need the quality.
Yeah. And having both programs is, kind of comes into that pro-con phase. You have the medical programs, the recreational programs, and every state has different laws, different taxes for each thing. So the taxes for medical cannabis sales versus recreational cannabis sales is always usually taxed at a higher rate.
Right.
And then you see states like Washington where they decided, hey, we're going to close down a lot of the medical marijuana program. All these dispensaries that are medical have to come in compliance with their state laws, and it's hard to say which one's going to survive, which kind of process is better. Can you have medical and recreational at the same time? Can you only have one program eventually? I would see that both of them merge into one program, most likely over time.
Right.
Whether that's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I don't know. So.
Do you think the state should basically maintain their ability to regulate that, or do you think this should be regulated at a federal level? Because it seems like basic economics would tell us to have the greatest industry or the strongest industry, we would want everyone to be playing by the same rules, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Playing by the same rules is key. You want perfect competition. So you want people that can compete in a, competitive way against each other, but at the same time, everybody getting the products that they need from the dispensary that's in the right location. So having, you look at Canada's model. Canada model is different. It's medically legal across the entire country, and all the sales are sold through 27 distributors in the mail. There are no dispensaries, and any dispensary that is open is currently actually is illegal, which is the opposite of us. And with them fighting on, Trudeau, who wants to make cannabis a recreational product, how will they handle it? Will they still have, medical dispensaries or medical programs selling it through the mail, or those now turn into recreational distributors? So we'll have to see how they kind of play it out. And everything, that's the best part about this industry. It's all trial and error. A lot of trial and error. It's not an exact pathway or footmark that people can follow into. And And with everybody's different opinions, whether you're on the West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, it's interesting to see what will play out and how it will eventually take effect.
And it's interesting to see the culture building around it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's I like to talk about consumption cultures. So like in the United States, we have a very bad alcohol consumption culture.
Yeah.
I spent some time in Germany. They have a much different consumption culture around alcohol. So they're starting younger. People know their limits a lot better. I mean, you can drink and drive in Germany. I believe that might need to be fact checked, but you can drink and drive as long as you're not drunk.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm not sure on that one, but
yeah, so that's, I'm going to bring it back to the United States. We're starting to develop, and you see this a lot on social media, is the actual consumption culture growing of how people are using it, you know, why they're using it, what are the appropriate amounts to use, things like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's super important as far as just legalizing anything that if, you know, cannabis has power over the human body, right? And if people are running around who don't know how to use it, I know there's that famous story of the reporter who took 16 doses of some edible in Colorado, like right after they had recreational legalized, and she had a terrible experience because she took a ton of edibles, which are super, super powerful. And basically wrote this long expose about how, you know, this is why it's bad, is because I accidentally took 16 times the amount I was supposed to take, and I was stuck in a freak out mode for 8 hours in my hotel room, which, you know, to me doesn't sound like a bad time, but to the uninitiated might be a little bit hard to take.
Right, and then that's the other thing with cannabis. It's, you know, in the beginning, I think the infancy stage of dosage. You know, what are the proper dosages? I think in Colorado and some of those other states like Washington, I think it's like 0.10 milligrams, milliliters, or whatever it is they go by to for the proper dosage. But it's like you can eat an entire candy bar like you would normally. Say you take a Hershey's bar that's non-cannabis infused, you can eat a whole candy bar no problem. Now you can do the same thing when it goes into an edible, and it could be an enormous strength, or it could be you know, a minor strength.
Right.
And so that's the thing, is I think it's, again, trial and error and proper labeling and proper, you know, industry standards is what needs to be established for that. And you can take it back to alcohol. You have one beer. It's very different than having one shot. You know, you take, you know, liquor versus beer, and it's like if you have 5 shots of liquor and 1 beer or 5 beers, you're off liquor, you're going to be a lot more, you know, tipsy.
Right. So. Absolutely. And the fact that there's different ways to obviously ingest cannabis. So edibles is a much different way than smoking. So smoking, you get more of a heady high. You're going to be high for maybe an hour or 2, maybe 3. Whereas if you take it orally, it's going to be a lot longer of a trip, and most times it's going to be a lot more intense, right? So that's where the reporter found out right away. You know, if she had theoretically smoked that much, it would have been much different than if she had consumed it, if she had eaten it.
Well, it reminds me of
dabs.
No, no, I'm not 2 Chainz. So it reminds me of the energy drink area. So, you know, it's kind of like pop or soda and energy drinks. You know, you can open up a can of Coca-Cola and drink like 30 of them. You'll be fine. You'll probably get fat. But if you open up, you know, 16 cans of Monster, you probably are going to die. You'll end up in the hospital. I know somebody who that happened to. And so, if you're an idiot and you walk into a dispensary and buy 16 edibles and you've never done it before and you eat them all, it's not because of the marijuana, it's because of your stupidity. And so, that really plays into everything, and I think it's funny now because a lot of people like to place the blame on other things instead of themselves, and that goes across the board, not everything, you know. So it's interesting to see how that transition is going to take place. And what's cool is back when we did Chicago Tech Week, this kind of popped in my head. Like, you know, most people think this has kind of been the standard over the last few years as people that smoke weed, you know, the hippie type of people, more lazy or laid back. But we were walking down the street talking to these guys. They're in suits, and we told them what we do, and they were like, "Oh, really? That's awesome. We smoke. We love to smoke, and blah blah blah." And they invited us up to their hotel room to smoke, like
Straight off the street.
like,
We had
right
never
there.
met them. They were just
Yeah.
they were advertising executives that were in the city for whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, they knew their stuff too. I mean, the guy was telling me about the difference between indica and sativa, which I already know, but it was nice to hear that depth of information coming from someone who I would just consider a casual user.
Yeah.
Right.
You might even, if I saw them on the street, I would probably say that they might be against it. And it's interesting because I used to be against it. I don't even smoke still. Like, I just don't like smoke in general. But I used to be against marijuana because I thought it was super, super bad for you. And then, like, I watched a documentary one time and I started learning. I'm like, wait, this is actually good. I've been, like, listening to all the bullshit for years about it. And, like, you know, do your research. You have to be smart when it comes to this.
Education's huge. I mean, I think, you know, whether it's edible education, you know, people, you know, understanding that you can't eat, you know, an entire
Well, and what you were talking
chocolate
about
bar.
with regulation was important too, because there probably should be a regulation that you don't put 16 doses of something into like a little
chocolate bar. And I think that's the education, again, trial and error. If you never drank before and all of a sudden you had, you know, 8 shots of vodka.
Do you remember the first time you drank? You drink?
I do not drink, actually.
Okay.
So
Nice.
I do not drink.
I was about to say, I remember the first time I drank and it was not fun.
Wow.
I've seen all my friends and what happens to them. I'm usually the one that was driving them home. But
Yeah.
Oh, no. Well, I was 17. I got severe alcohol poisoning. I was in the hospital. I had a seizure. It was like,
You're one of those, huh?
yeah, it wasn't bad. And what is really even worse is that it wasn't that I was necessarily unfamiliar with alcohol. Like, you know, my parents had always given me like sips of this, sips of that, but I'd never been drunk. And I didn't know like where the limit was. I assumed an entire bottle of vodka was an appropriate amount to drink.
Oh, no.
Yeah, go big or go home.
Yeah,
So that did not work out very well. And now I know.
I can, yeah, and it's an unfortunate situation. But at least with cannabis, the, you know, kind of the worst effect that will happen to you is because you can't overdose. You know, with alcohol, you could easily, you know, comatose or even possibly.
Yeah, no,
went into
I
death.
was in the ER and my heart didn't stop. It got real low, like 15
they
beats a minute.
Usually go into a coma after that.
Yeah, and so that's when they hit me with the epinephrine, which
Yep.
I guess was too much. And then, yeah. But,
Jesus,
Wow.
that's a
Okay.
rough experience.
yeah, it was super rough. And then waking, and my parents were pissed. Oh, they were livid.
Oh, I bet.
I was their good little Catholic boy
How old were you?
gone awry. 17.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, you just said screw it. Go big or go home.
Yeah.
The whole bottle, huh?
Yeah, and I was with my best friend. He didn't get as drunk, but
Oh, my goodness.
it's a good memory that we at least share.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never,
His wedding's coming
Well,
up
you
this
learn,
year
you know?
too.
I've never
Yeah.
done that. I've never drank an entire bottle. I'll have a few drinks, but like here and there. But I don't really go out and drink. It's not like my thing.
Right.
You know, more into health. It's kind of weird. You know, whenever I talk to somebody, you know, about what we do, and they're like, "What do you mean? You don't even smoke? Like, what the hell?" But it's not about like. I didn't join this because of that lifestyle.
Right.
I joined it because there's actually a good purpose in it. And, you know, I think that's where, you know, I see you as well, Kurt.
Yeah.
That's kind of where you came in. And I think that's really cool. You know, anytime people join an industry to make lives better or help out is super, super cool. And I think that's what's actually changing the game for this whole thing. Instead of just demand, it's actually purpose. You know?
Yeah, and you know, with the cannabis space, you know, whether you're a cannabis consumer or not a cannabis consumer, you can still have a huge passion around it for many different reasons.
Yeah.
You know, so like for me, I am super passionate about the cannabis space. Anybody you talk to, I'm super passionate about. And, you know, it comes from all these different reasons, whether it's a wellness benefit for individuals who want to consume, whether it's the, you know, freedom of choice, whether it's the war on drugs and too much economic money being spent in wrong areas that should be focused on drugs like meth.
Yeah, and I actually had that written down to talk to you about your views on the war on drugs, because right now we are in a time where we have basically said that the war on drugs has not worked.
Yeah.
The way it was implemented is incorrect. It is hurting people, not helping people with the mass incarceration of young African American males. You know, and it's so weird that now things that people were put in prison for. Like they lost their freedom to do whatever. They're in prison for it's legal now.
Yeah.
It's legal now. And why haven't these people been let out? You know, I understand the main argument behind that is that they knew it was illegal at the time. Yeah. Okay. I guess that makes sense, but why would you continue to punish them for something now that, you know, people on the outside, they can just do? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think it just goes into that, you know, shifting tide of, you know, perception. And at least finally we're getting to a stage where people are realizing, wow, like why increase the prison population for some cannabis use? And every state's different based on, you know, what you're caught with. And it just doesn't make sense for people to get incarcerated for that.
Yeah, well, they want the money. That's the obvious thing, that there's a private prison complex in the United States, like many other industries, and they want more people in their prisons so they have a bigger profit, and it's greed. It's greed. Greed made America great. Greed makes America a shitty place.
Also, it changes by state, and it's interesting to look at states because they're kind of like their own tribes. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If you compare California to Texas, oh my God, what a huge difference that is. So I think that seed kind of has to spread around our different tribes in the U.S. and, you know, have it get in there in different ways, just like, you know, gay marriage. Some people still, you know, are really against it, but once people realize it's not this bad thing, like people are people, you know, what's the difference? Then like, oh shit, okay, I can see that now. Then all right, no problem, whatever. Yeah. Like it's just a transition, but yeah. I always think about California versus Texas and how much of a difference that is. And I think that plays a part in how people are being arrested for different things, because in the eyes of that tribe in that state, that's really bad. That's not tolerated here. So I think that's kind of what's going on.
Yeah, and one other thing I want to talk about too was bringing back talking about alcohol versus cannabis, right? So cannabis, you can consider cannabis usage also as and this will sound really new age, but like a consciousness expanding activity, right? So getting high actually is not, it's not only that you're having some sort of, you know, euphoric feeling, but you are beginning to look at the world in a different light. Yeah. And I know lots of people who that's, you know, cannabis is kind of almost a philosopher's tool for them, right? And so I think that's why what you're putting together here with Kannatopias is important, because you don't get that with alcohol. Nobody is having breakthroughs when they're drunk, right? Your brain is functioning at a lower level.
Unless you're a writer, because it seems like a lot of writers get really hammered. But I think there's more to battle, like depression and stuff like that.
Right, yeah. But with cannabis, it's, you know, you can have
an enlightening feel, basically.
Yeah, you can have really interesting, introspective experiences that can add to you as a person.
It's an enhancement. You know, it's basically you have, and that's why I love cannabis. Is there's so many different areas that can, whether it's a wellness benefit, whether it's just freedom of choice benefit, whether it's a creativity tool. You look at many different art. You can look at from a very artistic perspective. Artists, painters, you know, curators, whatever you may be, that use cannabis to maybe enhance their visuals or, you know, have a different light. Or you can look at, if you're very strict, you can look at the business professional. How many, you know, Fortune 500 CEOs use cannabis? How many presidents have used cannabis? How many?
I'm sure Barack Obama likes to smoke up. He just looks like it. I'm sorry.
I mean, he did. He definitely has, and he's, you know, said the reason he used it for, and he used it a lot when he was in his college days and whatnot. But, you know, why should people like that have to be afraid? And that's kind of what we're trying to do at Kannatopia, is find that middle ground.
Sure.
Is find, you know, the modern cannabis consumers who that use cannabis, but, you know, are on the fence which way they're going. Maybe they're not as open to admitting it. Maybe they are. You look at what's happening with like Women Grow right now with Jane West out in Colorado, basically taking tons of women industry professionals and creating a group as a one voice for women in the cannabis space, and that's just an amazing thing that they've been doing. So.
Wow.
Yeah, to touch on that, that's interesting, because one of the big stories that helped kind of flip my perspective on marijuana was this woman who had this child. I don't know, I forget what he had. I think he had epilepsy. I'm not too sure though. But he he would go all day just having these seizures, I believe, and he had all these issues. And she would drive across, it might have been Ohio, I forget what state, through the entire state, like every week, just to go and get him marijuana so he could survive. And I'm like, that's insane. Like that should not be illegal. If it's not there's no other reason but for health. And like, I was just so blown away by that mom would just drive for hours and hours just to get marijuana because she was too afraid to get it by in her state,
like a drug dealer or something.
Yeah,
and that speaks to the effectiveness too. That a lot of these anti-seizure medications have a lot of really bad side effects.
Yes, they do.
I know a girl who's got a seizure disorder. She had one not in front of me, but it was I came back after they had taken away, and the side effects from the medication she's taking, she has to like take a nap in the afternoon because she's so lethargic from it. Yeah. But if she's not on this medication, she can't function. She can't go to work. She can't just live her life.
Yeah,
it seems that there's a high possibility that CBD oils, things of that nature, would help her. And not with the side effects that she's getting from her. And I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying this based off of anecdotal evidence.
Yeah, I can tell. I mean, I see it firsthand. My brother's an epileptic who takes 4 different seizure medications a day, which equates to 20 pills. And that's a huge problem that he takes these traditional medications, and yes, they are helping, but they're always double-edged swords. So if you're not familiar with epileptic medication, they're double-edged swords. If you take them, they're good. They can help with certain areas, but you have so many side effects.
Right.
If you don't take them and all of a sudden abruptly go off them, you can just die, and that's terrible. It's like, well, once you start, you can't stop. Right. And everybody has a different case for different reasons, and you always have to wean off or wean on them to try different medications, and it's so hard, but you're going through, again, during this time period, so many different side effects that can happen, whether you loss of appetite, loss of weight, dizziness, vomiting. It's endless. And
right.
Everybody has a different reaction due to medication, but I see it on a first-hand basis. So,
yeah, no, and that's just, I think that's what is swaying a lot of people is seeing the benefits and hearing the stories of, a lot of times children who are helped by CBD oils and stuff. And now we're, as a people, as a nation, we're kind of waking up and realizing that this was something that was, the prohibition on cannabis. It's a huge story. It's a long story, but it was pretty much down to greed and that's it. And it's interesting too that not only with legalization are people able to consume cannabis now, but now that production is up, we're seeing other things too come along, like Hempcrete. Have you heard of Hempcrete?
Hempcrete?
Hempcrete.
Not Hempcrete, but hemp
Hempcrete.
oils, hemp seeds.
So Hempcrete is concrete that uses marijuana, like the plant fibers in it. Yeah. It's like antimicrobial. It's stronger than some forms of concrete, things like that. And now that they have enough production, they're growing enough cannabis and stuff like that. They have the byproducts to actually make this at a cost-effective manner.
Okay.
Yeah, hemp is.
There's so many different things you can do with it.
Yeah, I've been kind of following that, not too closely, but I hear about it and I'll check it out here and there. But there's so much stuff. Like I saw this house that was built completely out of hemp, and how it naturally repelled bugs. It was like super, super strong. Yeah. It let air in and out.
It's a hardy product.
Yeah, all kinds. It's like insane. And to think that is illegal is mind blowing to me. Like, that one little thing could change so much in the way that we live, like the way we can shut our houses and like all these different things, clothes. Like, it's crazy. It's all illegal because of a goofy misconception from years ago.
Right.
I mean, you can use it for so many different things. They go hand in hand. But I mean, whether it's textiles, whether it's clothing, whether it's, from what I hear, you can use it for like biofuel or something to run your car off of. So many different areas that you can go, and I know there's at least over 120,000 different products that you can create or use, whether it's healthcare products as well, that could benefit you, whether from a wellness perspective or just a simple daily life enhancement.
Yeah, one of the other big things is they're making a like recyclable form of plastic with hemp fibers and stuff, and that's like huge because as far as pollution goes, plastic is one of the main issues that the environment is facing because it doesn't the molecules in plastic, they don't ever break down past their like singular molecular form. So you're going to have all of this plastic in one molecule forms just floating around. And these plastics they're not good for you. They are definitely unnatural. They can screw up your hormone systems, all sorts of stuff like that. And right now the ocean is pretty much a giant experiment of how much shit we can dump in it and for it to survive. Because there's a lot of plastic in the ocean right now. Have you heard about the gyres, they call them? Yeah. Where they just
collecting
culminates?
the plastic? Or are you talking about the areas where the plastic?
Yeah, I'm talking about, and there are some really cool, like innovative, startups and entrepreneurs that are actually looking at that problem and focusing on it and coming up with some pretty interesting solutions.
Yeah, I've seen a cool one. I forget the name of it, but these two guys that were surfers, I forget what state, most likely California, but they've created some device where you stick it in the harbors and all the plastic or stuff that's floating around, whether it's not plastic or whatever it is, floats around, comes into it, sucks it in.
Yeah, I saw that.
You can take it out and dump it out. I thought that was an awesome product. And then they went into exactly the same thing, that the different places in the seas where all the plastic kind of circulates around and makes these huge just plastic fields almost.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important because we need to. It would be really hard for our civilization to just stop using plastic. I don't think that's going to happen. But if we could replace it with something that's not going to trash the fucking environment, that would be like best case scenario, Yeah,
and I'm not too sure if this is right, but I thought I heard that plastic is made or relies on oil in some way or something like that.
Yeah, so plastic is made from it's a distillation process through crude oil is where it starts.
Okay, yeah, that's insane to me that's tied in with oil companies. That probably plays a huge part in it as well. Yeah. But yeah, because I'm sure think about all the things that we do now as human beings and that we can't somehow figure out how to replace plastic.
Yeah, plastic and oil. Those are the two. Yeah. Two ones that are so hard. Everything you do or see is based off of one or the other. Yeah, most cases, both of them. So.
Yeah, and I haven't seen Elon Musk is trying to push these electric cars as hard as he can. Nobody talks about the endless amount of super toxic stuff that is produced when they're making these batteries. Like that is just not even a conversation that we're having there. Everyone has this really daisy painted picture of, electric vehicles. And like, do you understand the amount of toxic like sludge? And I'm not saying that oil production doesn't pollute either, because it certainly does.
Well, there's a handoff that needs to be. It's if you're taking a step in one direction, there's always going to be a compromise you have to make. In my opinion, if you would say, Michael, what do you want? A world that runs on oil or a world that runs on electricity and battery? And I would say electricity and battery till the day I die, because Nikola Tesla, dude was a genius. He's figured out how to do so many things that we can do today, but they won't allow it. And running our entire world, off of free energy.
Oh, free energy! We're entering conspiracy theory territory.
No, that is not a conspiracy theory.
I don't know. I've seen some refute videos on YouTube that were quite impressive to refute the free energy.
Free energy is whatever I can do with my legs and arms.
But that's the problem. Like, free energy is such a goofy buzzword because Nikola Tesla actually proved that he can power the entire world with electricity for free. Like, it's a fact. It's documented. It's there. But it makes me laugh because you got Elon Musk that's gonna send people to Mars soon, but we can't figure out what to substitute for plastic and oil. So
right. Well, no, we figured it out. We're just still coming around to the fact that it's gonna be from a plant that we don't necessarily like right now for whatever reason. So
well, the good thing was with cannabis and hemp, it gives a lot of different people, a lot of different entrepreneurs, a lot of different people to come up with new innovative products.
Sure, yeah,
and come up with new things like what we're trying to do as well.
The industry is absolutely booming right now, and it's such an exciting time. And I actually had a question about entrepreneurship that I really wanted to ask you.
Yeah,
but let me bring up this first. Is that so we. Kurt, we met you at Kannatopia Chicago, which is which is a meetup they have at 1871. If you know what 1871 is, it's basically a startup incubator for companies, right?
Digital startups, yeah.
Yeah, for digital startups. So they have there's people there 24/7. They have all these interesting events they put on, all this good stuff. If you're an entrepreneur who has a product or an idea, or you're just getting started, I mean, the place is just a really good resource for anyone trying to do something. And I just lost my train of thought.
Kannatopia meetup.
Kannatopia meetup, yeah. So that's where we met you, and it's interesting just to see the buzz right now that is happening in the industry as it's opening up. And the question I wanted to ask you about entrepreneurship was, so as a fellow entrepreneur, and I was talking about this kind of idea that I've been having with another entrepreneur that I know. And I was explaining that I kind of think right now is like the best and worst time to be an entrepreneur, right? So we have all this amazing technology that kind of got pumped out during the 2000s that we as a civilization haven't necessarily capitalized on. So right now you see all of these tech companies starting that are filling all these new voids because of the technology that's out there.
Right.
And it's also a bad time to be an entrepreneur because it seems like there is like 4 billion of us trying to, get stuff going, to get stuff started.
Yeah.
And it seems that the narrative or the way that people have thought about, just like regular middle class people have thought about living their lives, before it was, maybe not go to school, get a job, a nice stable job, make a good income, have 2.5 kids, have a car, have a house. But that's changing now. Well, it's changing for people who want to actually do something. And entrepreneurship is really the only way. You can still go into a company and try to climb the corporate ladder. But what are your thoughts on that as far as how entrepreneurship right now is being executed? Is it a good time to be an entrepreneur? Is it a bad time?
I don't think there is a good or bad time. I think it really just revolves around what you're passionate. And I think that's what drives most entrepreneurs to be entrepreneurs, is what they're passionate about, whether it's being in the cannabis space or being in a car space or being in coming up with some new product. I think that's what drives and what's drove a lot of our country to get so many innovative products, innovative technology where we're at right now. And that, if you look at it over a historic time period, there's never a good time, never a bad time to be an entrepreneur. I knew that for me, the right time period was one after my education.
Sure.
Just because I think that's what's really helped me right now steer a lot of different things, from understanding financial metrics, understanding how to implement those kinds of things, and at the same time building up kind of that core base. But for some people, it's just, maybe I don't go to school. Maybe you go right away, you go right into it, and that happens all the time as well. Or maybe you go 10 years into the corporate space and then say, hey, I want a whole different thing. And I've seen that a lot at 1871. So 1871 gives you a lot of opportunity to meet different founders or different people trying to do different types of companies for whatever reason. So I've met people that are, 18 years old that didn't go to school and they want their idea and they're going for it. Then I've met people that are 45 years old that did 20 years in the corporate world that now coming into entrepreneurship route. And the one thing that really is the core thing is the passion of why they said, hey, this is what I'm doing and why I'm going for it now.
And I love the older guys too, because they usually have a very directed passion, and then they also make me feel not as bad that I'm starting at my stage in life, because you always think I should have started earlier, But it's, as far as being an entrepreneur, if you're going to be one, you will start when you're ready.
Yeah, and I think that's what exactly. You start when you're ready. And then you figure out things from there, and sometimes you can go into your whole business dynamics of, what's the right product market fit? What time's the right timing for this? And for what we're doing at Kannatopia, I had the idea 4 years ago. Stemmed around from going to the very first Marijuana Business Daily Conference in Colorado. 200 of us sitting in a room. And when everybody left, everything was an in-person conversation. But when everybody left, it wasn't, it was send an email, or some of it went to the social kind of aspect, but it didn't carry forward.
Right.
So that's where that kind of stemmed, was what's a better way to bring everybody together. And I thought that the timing for what we were doing just wasn't the right time yet. And I think that time came now. So
interesting.
Yeah. And Michael, I know you're going to talk about our same timeline. So go ahead.
Well, I mean, we've been I had the idea about 3 or 4 years ago as well, and it was just too early, and nobody understood. Nobody wanted to risk it. They're like, no, that's not going to happen. But it did. But I want to touch on the entrepreneur thing. I think it's very interesting. There's of course positives and negatives, but the cool thing is, like, it reminds me of like basketball and football. Like, those are such huge sports, and everyone wants to be a part of it. Everyone wants to play on the Lakers or the Bulls. And, like, when you have that type of competition, you see, like, the space grow so much. You see so many amazing things come out of, like, tech because of how many people are competing in it. And, like, think about Amazon with these drones and the delivery stuff. Like, in the next 10 years, it's going to be insane. Like, the way that, like, our technology is going to be so amazing and so cool because we have all these players in the field. Not everyone can be the best, and I think that's cool. I like competition.
Oh, and it's going to get strange. It's going to get weird real quick.
It really is. I've seen some really goofy videos on Facebook about the way our technology is going to go, and, like, just a topic we don't even need to get into. Anyways, so
I'm looking forward to it.
But I love the competition. I think it's great, and I don't think, even though there are a lot of people that are participating in the act of being an entrepreneur, everyone's not, and it's a good thing for people to experience that because they can get out in time and do something that they are actually good at or that they actually care about. But I mean, a lot of people who are like, I have this idea, I'm going to do this. And how rare it is for them to actually execute on that idea, it's insane. Mm-hmm. Because, being an entrepreneur is a buzzword right now. It's so cool. All the coolest people in the world.
Yeah, it's sexy.
Yeah. And so but what's not sexy is the actual act of doing it. Everyone's like, the term's cool, but the stuff you have to do sucks.
And I think that, again, that just comes from the passion.
Exactly.
That's what drives you up, when you have down days and up days. Eventually, every day is crazy, whether it's up, good, bad, left, right, straight.
Yeah, exactly.
And what gets you through is kind of those cores of why you go into it. If you're going into it just to make tons of money, that's not the real reason.
You're going to be out real quick.
Yeah, because, that could happen, could not happen. I mean, 4 out of 5 companies fail.
Yeah.
So the stats are not in your favor. But if you're derived on changing something, or you kind of have those core fundamentals of making something better, that's what's going to drive you through to what you're doing. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about your co-founder too, because Michael and I, as starting a company together, it is definitely a dynamic relationship that it takes a lot of work. We're sharing a vision. We're both pushing towards that vision. And sometimes different opinions come up. And we're two individuals, so we have different opinions on stuff. And what we finally have found is a good, synergistic base where we can, push ideas off of each other, where we can draw energy from each other. And that only came through time, So I wanted to ask you too about your co-founder, just as one entrepreneur to another, what that relationship looks like, what it looks like for you guys.
Okay. So yeah, my co-founder's Valerie Scarlata. She's my chief technology officer for Kannatopia, and she's great. We have a good understanding of each other. I have a much more business sense and entrepreneurial sense. She has a very entrepreneurial sense, but she has the tech experience. So we kind of complement each other very well, and we kind of knew that going into it. That's a lot of our key fundamentals for us. And it looks pretty good. We enjoy being with each other. We enjoy talking about technology. We enjoy talking about cannabis, and those core things of technology and cannabis is what drove us together to start what we did. And that was a huge thing for us to have that same vision of this is what we love. We love the cannabis space. We love the technology space. And then it was very synergistic for us from the get-go. And then just pushing forward is kind of where we are today. And we're really happy that how things have been working out for us. And we were excited to get Kannatopia going even further.
Yeah, I've been waiting.
I know.
For the email because I signed up.
Yep.
And I'm waiting for you guys to launch. Do you have any updates as far as timeline as that goes?
So we're going through some alpha testing right now, and then we think in a few weeks the beta testing should be ready to go. Again, technology being a 2-person team is always tough.
Yes.
You run into so many setbacks that you don't see or, that just pop up. And then, unlike a company that may have, millions of dollars in resources or 20 people, puts you back a week or two just from stupid little things that happen.
Yes.
And that's the frustrating part, and that's what you face as, an entrepreneur, is that you don't have all the resources. You don't have the right fundamentals of having the luxury of having 10-person teams or $1 million to contract and outsource stuff. So it's in the beginning stages. If you run into a problem, you got to fix it yourself, and you got to spend the time. So we're hoping that we're pretty much getting close to that, and we're excited to get the beta version rolling. So
yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, that's so. Quick question: what in the next around 5 years? What do you want Kannatopia to be? What's your goals?
For Kannatopia in the next 5 years would be, one of the leading technology platforms in the cannabis space, connecting, users together that is giving value back to them every single day. And that's our huge thing. One of our core fundamentals is we want to make sure people get a lot of value out of what we're doing, not just a destination, but something where they can go and say, wow, that enhanced my life. That made it, whether it's from a understanding basis, meeting somebody different or like-minded like them, whether it's reading or understanding something new or getting exposed to new products and companies that are doing innovative things in the space. You take Illinois, for example. Medical cannabis just came here in the last couple months, basically, and you can say, okay, I can buy cannabis from a dispensary. But if you walk into a dispensary, there are hundreds of different products and different types of ingested method of products that you can use. And everybody has a different cannabis knowledge, whether you're a newbie in the space or somebody that's very experienced. Even to the most experienced person, you're running into so many different products, and you don't have a great place to get exposed to that. And that's one thing that hopefully in 5 years from now we see, is that we want to make sure that our users will always get value out of our site. So.
Yeah. And that's a conversation we've had on the LeafDrop side too, as well, is what is our value proposition, and staying focused on that. What are we here to do? And what makes this different? And I think too, you're in a good spot as far as Kannatopia goes, because as the millennials get older and even the younger generations get older, they are technology natives. Mm-hmm. This is how they communicate with the world around them. So it makes sense for them to have a social space, an app where they tap for that type of information, because that's what they're used to. I mean, if you look at any little kids today, they all have iPhones and tablets. And they know how to use them better than the adults. I mean, there's going to be a generation of people who, and even I am like this, that I don't necessarily, I kind of remember when there was not the internet, but most of my memories is when we had the internet.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And that's going to drive a lot. And consumers just get smarter and smarter as well. Everybody's reading the back of labels. Everybody's, looking, is this organic or not? Is this grass-fed or not? Is this a healthy product or not a healthy product? And I think, with millennials, a very, demographic that's very into what they put in their body versus let's go to McDonald's every single day, makes the consumer a smarter person. So everybody wants to understand what they're using in a much more better and easy fashion. So
yeah, totally.
Right on. All right. Well, I think we're probably going to end it there. I think we're right around the hour mark. Kurt, thank you so much for coming in. It was great speaking with you and hearing your views on everything. I can't wait for Kannatopia to launch, and best of luck to you and everything you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And if anybody's interested in signing up for the Kannatopia beta version, you can go to Kannatopia.com, and that's with a K.
Okay, and we will also put a link in the show notes. So if you're reading this on the LeafDrop blog, it will be in the article. If you are on YouTube watching us and listening to us, it will be in the YouTube section down there. In the description. Thank you, Michael. All right, well, that's all we have for you today on the Marijuana Minute podcast, covering cannabis news, culture, and politics. And, well, it's going to be about 61 minutes here or less. And the Marijuana Minute is brought to you by LeafDrop. Head over to leafdrop.co to find local dispensaries and collectives in your area. We've made it super easy to find what you're looking for. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks.